Coming up next on Insights on PBS Hawaii, Election 2014, Democratic primary candidates for governor. Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Mahealani Richardson, your host for tonight's show. Just a quick note, during our election coverage, Insights is not able to accommodate all candidates running for each race. Our goal is to provide conversations that best serve the public interest. This November, Hawaii voters will be deciding which gubernatorial candidate will be running our state for the next 4 years. But first, the primary on August 9th will determine which of the 3 Democratic candidates will be advancing to the general election. The Democratic candidates for governor are incumbent Governor Neil Abercrombie, State Senator David Ige, and Van Tanabe. Tonight's guests in their first joint televised appearance are Governor Abercrombie and Senator Ige. We invite you to join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. Now to our candidates. Neil Abercrombie is nearing the end of his first term as Hawaii's governor. The New York native, who arrived in the newly minted state of Hawaii in 1959, started out as an academic, then entered politics in 1975. Since then, Neil Abercrombie has been elected to serve as a state representative, state senator, and Honolulu City Councilman, as well as serving 9 consecutive terms in the United States Congress before resigning to run for governor in 2010. David Ige has represented Pearl City in the Hawaii State Legislature since 1994. As a state lawmaker, his committee assignments have included chairing the State House Education Committee, where he wrote the first charter school bills, and most recently serving as chairman of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means. In addition to his legislative career, the senator has also had a 34-year career as an electrical engineer. Welcome to you both. And by a random draw, Governor Abercrombie, you get the very first question.
Thank you, Mahealani.
Governor, who can take credit for the recovery of the economy?
Well, I was hired to do a job in 2010. We faced furlough Fridays. We faced a $220 million deficit. We faced a recession. And as a result of the game plan that we put into effect, we've completely changed that around. It's an interesting fact that we've had this opportunity over the past 4 years to see what happens when you really exercise fiscal management. That's what I was hired to do. That's what's been done. We're now back. We're in the black, and we're going to stay in the black. Every year since I have taken office in 2010, we have come in with a positive ending balance, so much so that we now have the best interest rates that we've ever had in the entire history of the state. As a result, we've been able to make infrastructure investments that are unprecedented. So now we have a situation here in 2014 where there are no layoffs, there's no furloughs, there are no labor disruptions. We now have a prosperity that puts us in a position to have confidence in the future.
Governor, governors across the country, both Republican and Democrat, are taking credit for the recovery. So isn't this just the natural flow of the economy that we're in?
Well, it's not the natural flow of the economy in terms of how you manage it. This is where the operational budget comes in. What the legislature does is set the boundaries. It sets both the appropriations and the authorizations for the spending. But the quarterback that calls the plays is the governor. I'm the one that has the responsibility to make the tough decisions and face the hard choices. Now, that doesn't always satisfy everybody. It doesn't make everybody happy. But when you're governor, you have to make those tough decisions, you face those hard choices, and the results are in. Hawaii is now better off than it's ever been before. Our unemployment is down to 4.4%. On some of the neighbor islands, it was up to almost double digits. We have more people employed than ever before. The unemployment tax rates for our businesses is now going down. They're saving money, as much as $300 an employee. So on by every index, we've made a recovery that is a result of the fiscal management that is the governor's duty and responsibility.
Governor, thank you. And Senator Ige, what's your opinion? Who can take credit for the recovery of the economy?
Well, Mahealani, I think we all can take credit for the recovery of the economy. Every part of the economy had to work together. The legislature, I believe, is the one that makes the tough decisions. You know, governor wanted to tax pensions, and the legislature said, no, we're not going to tax the pensions to balance the budget. You know, we have been working, governor submitted a budget and the legislature made tough decisions to cut that budget. In the 4 years that I've served as chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, we've cut the governor's budget by $1 billion. So if you look at a whole bunch of different ways, if we had adopted every single proposal the governor had made, we clearly wouldn't be in the position that we are today.
But can't the administration take any credit for the recovery?
I think that they do have a part of it, but you know, you can look in a lot of different ways. I mean, clearly public employees took a pay cut for the first part of that, and that helped us. And if you look at the economy and the tourism industry, for example, from the very beginning of the governor's term, to where we are today, we've increased visitor arrivals, and the tourism industry, visitor industry, is generating $744 million more than at the time when the governor took office. So, you know, there's a lot of different things. I do believe that the legislature and I, as chairman of Ways and Means, did our part. You know, we fought against the tax increase. We've cut the budget by $1 billion. You know, we've looked at those kinds of things that we thought would change the economy. We did appropriate a lot of funds for infrastructure. We focused on core services. We spent more on repair and maintenance of the public schools than ever in the history of the state of Hawaii. And it's about making tough choices.
Well, Senator, speaking of taxes, is there any situation in which you would raise taxes and fees?
Right now, we have raised fees for selected services. Really, the fees come into play when you try to balance, and there's a specific purpose for the fees. Taxes, broad-based taxes, I would say absolutely not. We need to live within our means until we can get through this economic.
How realistic is that, to not raise taxes?
Well, we've done it for 4 years, and we've come through the toughest, the biggest recession ever in the history of the state of Hawaii. So I think if we can survive this 4 years without raising taxes, I'm confident as governor we would be able to sustain it.
Governor, is there any situation in which you would raise taxes and fees?
I think we need to get a little perspective here on what's just been said. The good senator, of course, is very familiar with the idea of putting in a bill to raise a pension tax. He put in HB 438, as a matter of fact. So he understands that when you have to have all options on the table, you have to take everything into account. Now, his pension tax proposal didn't fly, and it didn't fly this time. So that meant that we had to take a look at getting labor savings. Now, I was able to hold the line at 5%. The senator wanted to take 10%. He was afraid that 5% wouldn't be enough. That's because the legislature did not budget in order to deal with the deficit. And the budget that the senator refers to right now, for the next 2 years, according to the budget proposal that he put forward and the report that he put forward, is going to operate on a deficit basis and just simply spend down the positive balance that this administration helped create, $844 million. We turned around $1 billion in 4 years, and so the plan that I have put forward is a 6-year plan that shows a positive balance for all 6 years. So, as I say, I'm quite content to say, yes, you have to work with the legislature, but all the legislature can do is put forward a budget. It's the operational spending formula that the governor has to put into place that sees to it whether we go positive or negative. When I came into office...
But Governor, you wanted to raise the soda tax, so is there any other situation in which you would raise taxes?
We wanted to see to it that we have the opportunity to have a healthy Hawaii. And this was one way to get into place a formula to be able to invest in a wellness when you have a state where diabetes, including childhood diabetes, where obesity, where other difficulties associated with the rising costs of health care are involved, that we're able to address the health care premiums by putting in, recognizing the cost that comes from sodas and unhealthy dietary problems. It helps us to address the costs associated with health care.
Senator Ige, what is your response to this?
You know, we did have a hearing on the soda tax, and you know, there are a lot of different, more direct ways to improve the health of our community. And we don't believe that taxing behavior and taxing soda was the solution. It would be more important to provide protection, prevention services, and really encourage healthy lifestyles rather than taxing soda.
Let's go back to the budget. Governor Abercrombie, after a budget discrepancy was announced, your campaign manager said Senator Ige can't add. Do you believe that?
Well, you have to look at the budget report. And the report says very, very clearly that the $399 million associated with the school infrastructure expenditures was going to be lapsed and reauthorized. It wasn't done. It caused us then to have a situation in which it was impossible for the governor, any governor, to be able to sign that bill. I was forced into a situation where I had to wait till July 1st, after the fiscal year ended, in order to be able to sign the bond authorization bill. It's a question of paying attention.
But do you believe that Senator Ige can't add?
Well, Senator Ige obviously wasn't able to add up correctly. He says in a recent interview that he reads every single line of the budget and is responsible for every single line of the budget. Now, the result of the failure to add correctly, the carelessness that was associated with it, means that I had to take $46 million from the school improvement and infrastructure construction program, and we'll have to go back to the legislature next year and ask them to possibly add that in.
Senator Ige, what is your response to the fact that Abercrombie's campaign manager said that you can add?
Well, Mahealani, I obviously can add, but I do take responsibility for the budget bill and the bond authorization. I am chairman of Ways and Means, and I take responsibility for that. The fact of the matter is that it was administrative errors, and that we had discussed a workaround that both the administration and the House and the Senate agreed to. And there was really a painless solution, I think, that would allow us to proceed with the appropriations that we had made in the budget, and that would have no significant impact on operation. So we agreed to proceed in that manner.
You know, Republican Sam Sloan said that lawmakers in both chambers, the House and the Senate, knew that there was this problem. So why was this allowed to continue?
It wasn't so much that it was allowed to continue. As you know, Mahealani, you know, the end of session is a lot of different things happening to try and complete all of the legislation as we're coming to the deadline. So clearly, like I said, I do take responsibility for the fact that there was an error, but we do have an explicit workaround plan that would allow us to fund all the appropriations that the House and the Senate agreed to in a way with relatively minor administrative workarounds.
We have a lot of questions from our viewers tonight, and this one is from Keith via email, and I'll ask Senator Ige this question. Will there be enough schools in Kaka'ako given all of the development?
No, that's one of the concerns I have with Kaka'ako. There is no plan for a school facility in the Kaka'ako region, especially for no school for an elementary school age level. And that's a real big concern of mine, and that's a big concern of lots of residents in Kaka'ako. They may be able to accommodate the students at the middle school and the high school age, but there is no space for elementary school.
Governor Abercrombie, what is your response to that? Will there be enough schools
There's more
in
than enough.
Kaka'ako?
There's more than enough space right now. Just if you take where the Kaka'ako development area is, it includes the entire McKinley area and the entire Blaisdell Center area. There are schools immediately adjacent to that. The question for the schools comes with planning, and when the balance is struck, when we have the housing come into Kaka'ako, then the schools will follow it, and there's plenty of room for the land for that to take place. In fact, we're looking to put forward what we call 21st century schools. The Board of Education is very anxious to see to it that we take public land and go to see if we can get public-private partnerships to develop 21st century schools and possible commercial and residential housing to go with it. That's where good planning comes into the picture. We're creating a community in Kaka'ako, and Kaka'ako will have the necessary schools and all the amenities to go with it.
Governor, we have another question via email, and this person wants to know, what's your stance on health care rights for the Micronesian immigrant community in Hawaii?
Well, for those who have paid attention to it, as I have from my days in Congress, I was one of the people in Congress that was leading the charge to try and get Medicaid provisions for our Micronesian brothers and sisters. The Congress has not taken care of the unfunded mandate that the compact requires. The compact means that people from Micronesia can travel freely back and forth to the United States, which obviously includes Hawaii or Guam or the west coast of the United States. And as a result, we have health care responsibilities there. The state has assumed those responsibilities and is going to continue to assume those responsibilities as long as it's required. But that does not prevent us then working with the congressional delegation to see to it that we get the Congress to understand they have to try and assist not just Hawaii, but Guam or any other state with meeting the medical care responsibilities.
Senator Ige, what's your stance on health care rights for these Micronesian immigrants?
You know, I do believe that we should be providing health care benefits for the Micronesian immigrants. You know, they are a part of our community and we need to provide services to them. But we need to remind the Congress and continue to fight to have the federal government pay its fair share, because clearly right now the state is paying for the cost of providing health care.
You know, Senator Ige, there's been so much controversy over the Department of Education right now. And do you think that the DOE is just going through growing pains toward improvement, or do you think that the system is broken?
I do think that the department needs to walk the talk. You know, they say all the right things. They talk about empowering schools. They talk about leadership at the school level. But the reality is, as reflected in surveys of principals, you know, the department is ordering more and more activity from the top, from the board and the department, and principals feel they have less control and less decision-making authority at the school level. I've always believed in all of my time as chair of education and in the legislature that we will get the best benefit when we empower schools and support teachers and principals at the school level. I believe that every dollar that makes it to a school gets expended in a way that really benefits the students. I'm not convinced that every dollar that the Board of Education or the Department of Education decides to spend makes as big an impact in that area.
You've talked about giving schools more autonomy. How specifically would you do that right now?
It is about empowering the principals and the teachers and those at the school level to make the decisions. It's getting money to them instead of trickling it through. You know, less than half of the funds that the legislature appropriates actually goes in the weighted student formula and is delivered directly to the schools. I think you would see phenomenal improvements if the principals and the schools were empowered and the resources were delivered there.
Governor Abercrombie, what's your response?
Well, when you're going to talk about formulas and so on, that's obviously a legislative responsibility. What the Department of Education or the Board of Education has no taxing authority. They don't set the boundaries in any way. The administrative overhead in the Department of Education is around 7%. So the question of spending then comes down to policy considerations. And what's taking place right now is ongoing dialogue between the principals and the department, as well as the Board of Education, and the same with the teachers, to try and see if a formula can be put together to see to it that when we look to putting together the capacity to understand what the responsibilities of teachers are going to be, that it's a mutual dialogue taking place. And that's what's undertaken right now.
So you don't believe that the DOE is broken then?
The public school system right today has rising scores for our 4th graders, has rising scores for our 8th graders. The U.S. Department of Education has cited Hawaii as one of the rising school districts in the entire country. Don't forget, we have a school system that goes statewide. It doesn't just go to a city or a village. It is statewide, and so all the children are our responsibility. And I think that it kind of insults the teachers and the administrators in our public school system to say that they are not doing as good a job as they might otherwise be doing. We have rising scores. We have children that are winning contests in nationwide surveys, and to have a situation in which we denigrate the public schools, it seems to me operates against what the realities are.
Governor, we have another email question from Lawrence, and this is about GMOs. Are you for or against the labeling of pesticide ingredients and GMOs?
Everybody's entitled to information about the food that they eat and the food that they buy in the stores. At the same time, we want to make sure we don't punish people who have no control over the situation in terms of determining what GMO content might be. So I've been in contact with my good friend, Governor Peter Shumlin of Vermont, who has come to grips with this issue, and our Ag Department Chairman and the Ag Department Chairman in Vermont are in touch with one another, because there are obviously legal challenges to this too. So I'm taking a look at what we need to do in order to be able to get a labeling approach that can also meet legal standards, particularly at the federal level, that will withstand scrutiny.
Senator Ige, would you support that? Would you support the labeling of GMOs and pesticides?
Yes, I support labeling and requiring labels for GMO products at the federal level. I'm open to consider labeling at the state level, as long as it doesn't unfairly burden the local retailer and the local farmer. You know, it really is about supporting the local retailer. They don't have control of the labels. Remember, we still import 92% of the food that we eat. And so those labels will be labeled outside of our state, and we don't have any control in that. I do support better regulation of pesticides. I think obviously pesticides are not in the foods we eat, but we need to regulate it. The state has a core function to ensure the health and safety of our communities. And to that end, we need to know what pesticides are being applied, where they're being applied, and how they're being applied.
Daniel via Facebook wants to know, what would you believe is the biggest difference between you and your opponent, and how will it benefit Hawaii? Senator Ige, why don't you take a stab at that one?
Sure. I think it's a couple things. First and foremost, it really is about leadership style. I believe in bringing communities together, to listening to all views, being respectful, because I've always believed that we end up with better decisions when we can consider all points of view on any issue. And then we make the decisions that advocate and work in the public interest rather than special interest. You know, it is about being focused on what is in the best interest of our community rather than what would serve public special interests. And I think that that's very important. The other thing I think that is very important to recognize is I do have 35 years of private sector experience, and I've been an engineer and business executive for all of the time that I've served in the state legislature. So it really is about understanding how organizations work, and that's a experience I think that will help me do a better job with the budget.
Governor Abercrombie, what do you make of the fact that Senator Ige says you're serving special interests, and what do you believe is the biggest difference between the two of you, and how it'll benefit the islands? Mehalani,
everyone has special interests. We're male, we're female, we're mothers, we're fathers, we're breadwinners, we're seniors, we're children. There's special interests are common to us. The founding fathers of the country said that these special interests would be factions, that they would have different interests that they would try to put forward. The question isn't whether it's a special interest, it's whether your special interest becomes a private interest at the expense of the public interest. I've always operated on that formula. I try to take into account what everybody's position is, and then try to do the greatest good for the greatest number. Now, you don't always make everybody happy when you do that, but it's up to a governor to make those decisions. It's up to the governor to be the quarterback on the field and to make the calls. I've never shirked from that. I've never been on the sidelines. I've always been on the front lines. I don't say that every decision I've ever made has always been the correct one or always worked right, but the results are in the last 4 years. I came into a situation of fiscal chaos. I came into a situation where we had deficits and furloughs. The legislature had its opportunity to address that, but it didn't. It took a governor that was able to make hard choices and to make tough decisions in order to accomplish that. Hawaii is better today and going to be better tomorrow because of the decisions that I had to make. I will rest my case on those results.
I'm sure when both of you go out and talk to your constituents and talk to people, there's a lot of complaints about the homeless situation. There's this homeless encampment right near the John A. Burns School of Medicine with a lot of children. And one person from Eva Beach wants to know, and Governor Abercrombie, you can take a stab at this first. What's your plan for flying the homeless out of our state?
Well, I would prefer to talk about what we're actually going to be able to do. Whether people can be picked up and put on a plane and forced out of the state, I suspect will have some legal implications very, very quickly. But what we do have, though, and I'm happy to say, is a situation for the first time in 40 years, the mayor of the city and county of Honolulu and the governor of the state are working together. Mayor Caldwell and I are working with our interagency council on homelessness. We've put forward a plan called Housing First, where we try to take people, give them the opportunity to get off the streets and not just into shelter, but into a home so that we can give them the wraparound services they need if they're capable of doing it. Many of the people that you mentioned, for example, around the John Burns schools are some of our Micronesian friends that we were just talking about. And so those people are looking for an opportunity for a break. If we can get housing first, if we get cooperation with the city and the state, and we can put together the wraparound programs that are necessary, we believe that we can make a very positive step forward on it.
Senator Ige, would you advocate for flying homeless out of Hawaii?
A couple of things, Mahealani. I think it's very important to understand that the number of homeless in the last 4 years has increased by more than 30%. So we have 30% more homeless today than there were 4 years ago. The legislature did support a bill to provide funds for in very specific instances where someone gets to Hawaii, is homeless, and they have no support structure, that we could provide funds to fly them home if they choose to. Obviously, they would have to want to do that, but it's not something that would happen all the time. But I think it makes sense in where you have someone who might have been intrigued by coming to Hawaii and read all of the urban myths online about having it easy out here, and then get here, and then suddenly they're isolated, away from family, and have no options. So I do believe in that situation, it might make sense to fly those people home.
Let's move on to healthcare, and Catherine via email wants to know, Governor, would you go back to your plan to tax pensions and reimbursements for Medicare Part B benefits?
Well, obviously those proposals had to go on the table because we were facing a $220 million deficit, and we had unfunded liabilities that weren't being addressed. We faced a situation literally of fiscal chaos. So all options were on the table. And as a result, some of them flew and some of them didn't. We ended up then having to make the labor savings, which we did. What I promised at that time, I said, if we have the game plan, if we all put our paddles in the water, pull deep and pull together, that we would be able to survive this situation. The labor savings would help us to balance the budget, and then we could go to the credit rating agencies and say to them, we've stabilized our state finances. As a result, we got the lowest interest rates that we've ever had. And in that process then, we were able to make the investments in infrastructure, the airports, the rail obviously is part of this, and the transit-oriented development around it, which the state is cooperating with the city on. The airports, the harbors, the highways, the H1 right now that is being striped as we speak, and opening up new possibilities for people to increase their ability to get to work. So
let me give Senator Ige a chance to weigh in. Did you agree with this plan?
Absolutely not. In fact, I killed the tax on pensions, and I killed the proposal to take away the Medicare Part B reimbursement. The governor's plan that session really balanced the budget on the back of retirees, and we said absolutely not. It wasn't fair. Retirees are on fixed income. It wasn't appropriate for them to bear the large burden of balancing the budget. And so we said absolutely not.
Abercrombie, do you want to say any more about that? There's
Well,
a lot of people out there who want to know more.
Yes, I think the senator is very familiar with the tax on pensions because, as I indicated, he introduced a bill to tax pensions, SB 438. So the point I think that needs to be made here is that you put your options on the table and see where they're going to go. It's one thing to say we're going to balance the budget, but the legislature under his leadership has not been able to do it. The leadership that this administration has exhibited has been able to accomplish that. We had budget restrictions that we had to make where pay and benefits were concerned, and I said if we could hold the line at 5%, which was agreed to by the overwhelming majority of public employees, and I'm grateful to them for it, that we would be able to balance our budget, snap back, and be able to sign the contracts that we have right now that include pay raises and benefit increases back to the level they were.
Senator Ige, I'll give you the last word on this one.
All I can say, Mahealani, is this. We had told the House and the governor that there was no way that we would tax pensions. The governor and the House, to the very last day of deadline, was arguing that we should tax pensions, and the Senate said absolutely not.
Senator Ige, we have a question via Twitter. What's your position on importing liquefied natural gas to the islands?
I believe that we need to, from an energy perspective, really look at how we can reduce cost of energy in the state of Hawaii. The lowest cost energy option really is renewables. And so photovoltaic and wind energy really is the lowest cost. Yeah, I think we need to look at liquefied natural gas, and only in the sense that it may be a transitional. If there's a way that we don't have to commit to it for the long term, if there's a way that we can, for a transition period, import liquefied natural gas, that would reduce the cost of electricity to our residents, then I think that that's something that should be considered. You know, there is a lot more work that needs to be done on liquefied natural gas before any final decision is made.
Governor Abercrombie, what is your response?
Yes, I've been working on this since my time in the Congress. When you have an average of kilowatt hour in Hawaii of close to 40 cents, and it's about 12 cents everywhere else on the mainland, you can see that the operating budget of the ordinary family is being decimated every month just on energy costs. Now, natural gas is a carbon-based bridge to an alternative energy future or renewable energy future. And so we're pursuing that with the electric utility. We're pursuing it with companies that may be able to provide the natural gas bridge, and we think we're going to be very successful with that. Anything that will help to reduce the costs for the average working family in Hawaii is something we need to pursue and are pursuing.
Lydia from Manoa wants to know, what will you do in the future to improve your working relationship with the legislature?
Well, I think the working relationship with the legislature could be and is one that I'm thoroughly familiar with. You always have a natural tension. It's an occupational hazard between the legislature and the governor with respect to carrying forward what the legislature intends, as I say, by way of the boundaries that they establish, but then the governor has to be the quarterback who calls the plays and takes the operational responsibility for it.
Senator Ige, would your relationship change with the legislature if you were elected?
It definitely would change. Obviously, being the chief executive puts you in a very different role, but clearly, Mahealani, I have proven over my 29 years that I work very well with everyone in the legislature. You know, we were able to get a lot of things done ahead of schedule. You know, we, for the very first time, did the budget online and in the public completely with working with the House and Senate. So I'm very confident that I understand what the role of the legislature is. And I understand and have seen that we need a better executive. So many times the legislature has passed good legislation and put good policy in place only to fall flat in execution by the executive.
I think the viewers would like you both to ask each other a question. So, Senator Ige, do you have a question for Governor Abercrombie?
Well, if I had to ask the governor a question, I would ask, what is his position on legalized casino gambling? And if a bill authorizing casino gambling passed the legislature, what would he do with it?
I'd veto it.
Are you against any form of gambling here in the islands?
Yes.
Governor Abercrombie, do you have a question for Senator Ige?
Well, I think it would be interesting to note in the light of what you said about taking legislative responsibility, whether or not it's a fact that you have in your report to the people of Hawaii that for the next 2 years, the budget will be unbalanced, and that to avoid the responsibility of meeting that budget balance, we're going to spend down the $844 million that has been accumulated as a positive balance since this administration came into office.
We do have a balanced budget. We are required by Constitution to pass a balanced budget. And so I'm confident that the budget is in balance. The committee report is accurate. We cut $180 million, Governor, from your budget to make it balanced. And if we didn't, if we passed your budget as submitted to the legislature, we would definitely be in deficit.
Governor Abercrombie, would you like to respond to that?
Yes. The question is have you proposed a budget that's unbalanced and said that you will spend down the $844 million that we have accumulated in order to move forward, as opposed to the 6-year plan that I've put forward that stays in the black?
No, Governor, your 6-year plan does not stay in the black. Yeah, yes, as you stated when you've talked about it, the operating deficit for the next year, in this fiscal year that just started, we are spending more than we are generating by about $200 million. Yeah, but the governor's plan that he submitted to the legislature spent $400 million more than we were generating. So the question is, do you want to be $400 million in the red or $200 million in the red? I believe $200 million.
Mehalani, it does require, though, the fiscal year just ended. Yeah. I asked a very simple question, whether or not we were going to spend down the $844 million positive balance we had, and the senator has just said yes.
No,
I can tell you on June 30th.
The entire budget.
Senator Ige, why don't you answer?
You have to take responsibility for what you do.
I take full responsibility. We will be spending about $200 million more than revenues that's coming in. So the ending balance will end up about $640 million.
I think we're gonna have to agree to disagree on this particular
there's one other point, Mehalani. There's one other point that needs to be made, because the fiscal year just ended. So if what the senator said was accurate, then we'd be in a deficit. I will tell you, there will be a very healthy and robust positive balance reported within the next couple of weeks, I suspect in the neighborhood of $500 million. This administration has taken a responsible fiscal management stance from the very first day, and we have made up for the lack of fiscal responsibility that has been taken.
Senator Ige, I see you shaking your head, and I'm going to give you the last word on this one.
All I can say is the budget that we adopted is $180 million less than what the governor submitted to us. So clearly we will be ending with a positive balance, because we know, like I said, the ending balance will be over $600 million. I'm certain of it. But that's in the financial plan.
Thank you.
Let's talk about health care. Governor Abercrombie, the Hawaii Health Connector has suffered a series of problems from its beginning. What would you do to improve the Health Connector?
Well, right now, the Health Connector is a factor in Hawaii to a much smaller degree than it is virtually anywhere else in the country, because of the prepaid health care plan that passed back in 1974, back when I came in, matter of fact, back when I was first elected to the legislature. And so the prepaid health care plan and the progressive attitude we've had, legislatively speaking, over all the years that I was in the legislature and the city council, as well as in the Congress, our health care plan has provided a way forward for everybody else. So when the Affordable Care Act came into being, it was to help and assistance to people who did not have insurance. The number of people in Hawaii who don't have insurance is very small. Therefore, what we're applying for under the Affordable Care Act is a waiver to be able to utilize the resources we already have in Hawaii to better effect. So I'm confident that the difficulties the connector is having right now have more to do with the fact that it's disconnected from the Prepaid Health Care Act and the progressive policies that Hawaii has had all this time. So I think we can make an adjustment as soon as it's legally possible for us to do.
Senator Ige, what would you do to improve it and to have it work with our prepaid health plan?
I guess my disappointment, Mahealani, is that we knew the prepaid health plan was in place. You know, it's unfortunate that we have to seek a waiver to move back to there, because I would have asked for that waiver up front. You know, we cover 800,000 people in our community with under the Prepaid Healthcare Act, and the Health Connector is only serving 10,000 residents. Can you imagine that we're struggling to try to take and apply the requirements of Obamacare on these 10,000 consumers to the 800,000 who are part of prepaid health? You know, I think we need to restructure the whole program, and we shouldn't have gotten this situation to begin with, because we should have sought the waiver from the beginning rather than after the fact.
You know, there's some small business owners who said, you know, they went online, they tried to get in, and it didn't work for their small business. So what specifically could you do now and tell those people out there? Well,
I mean, I think the biggest mistake that that the governor has made and the board has made is they really agreed to allow age rating for insurance, and you know that didn't make sense because of prepaid. You know, a lot of the small businesses are finding, especially the ones that have established employees that are older, that their company insurance now is going to go through the roof because Obamacare requires that the insurance policies be rated by age, and that's a big mistake. And where I'm hopeful that we can get that exemption so we can get back to prepaid like it should have been from the very beginning.
And Governor Abercrombie, what would you tell those business owners who are frustrated with the Health Connector?
Yeah, well, what the governor does is make appointments along with the legislature to the Health Connector board. All I can do is carry out the mandate of the legislature. The governor, and no governor that I know of, created these connectors, whatever they are in each individual state. In Hawaii, I took the mandate of the legislature. We put our department people on it according to what the legislature said, and we're trying to move forward as best we can with it. You couldn't ask for a waiver in the first place up front, as the senator says. That's not what the law says. I have to obey the law. So does the legislature. So the Hawaii Health Connector is a mandate from the legislature with its best judgment as to how we could move forward in Hawaii. Obviously, because of the prepaid health care law and the small number of people that are involved, seeking the waiver at the first opportunity is what we should do, and I'm certain that's what we will do.
Governor Abercrombie, let's move on to the middle class and affordable housing. You know, these people in the middle are getting squeezed. Mm-hmm. What can the state do to bring down the cost of living for the middle class?
I think what we have to do is develop the urban core. All the way, if you take the back of my palm, Mahealani, as the island of Oahu, half the population of the state lives where my thumb is. Half the population of the state. That means that if you want to keep the country, if you want to see to it on all the neighbor islands as well, that you're able to build housing in areas where people are actually working, that means we have to develop that urban core. And that means moving all the way from the Sheraton Kaka'ako area through the Aloha Tower area, into downtown Honolulu, into Iwilei, and then out into Lower Kalihi. And then filling in that urban core gives us the opportunity to take the Hawaii Housing Development Corporation and the bond issue that we've just put forward for them to build the necessary units for our working families. That's the best way that we can see to it that working families get a break in terms of what they'll be able to afford.
Senator Ige, do you think that's the means to helping the middle class?
Well, I think helping the middle class is a couple things. I think first and foremost, we shouldn't be raising taxes on them. And I think that that's very important that we live within our means and at least we control the taxing portion of that equation. But yes, we need to focus on rental assistance housing. This past session, we increased the amount of money that goes into the rental assistance housing fund to $33 million a year, which is a big commitment to providing rental assistance housing. So it's really working with the nonprofits in our community. We don't want the state to get into the business of running a rental housing situation. We want to find those nonprofits who can construct it and operate it in a better way. We do need to look at developing housing at all price points, and that means that looking for those opportunities where we can get affordable housing.
Mark from Makiki wants to know, in terms of same-sex marriage, where do you stand on this issue, Senator Ige?
I did vote in support of the bill to provide same-sex couples the right to marry. Also in that bill, we did provide and ensure that churches, clergy, and church organizations would be protected and ensured that they would not be required to conduct any ceremonies that are against their religious faith. So I thought that that was a good balance of the individual rights against providing equal treatment and equal benefits for same-sex couples.
Governor Abercrombie, do you see things moving forward for this particular group?
Well, the Attorney General and our administration helped to put together the language that sees to it that everybody's First Amendment rights with regard to the practice of their religion is respected, and at the same time saw to it that everybody had equal opportunity for marriage equity. And so the fact that we've had no legal difficulty since the passage and signing of the bill, I think points up the fact that we did a good job, and it shows that the legislature and the governor, of course, can work together. And as someone who has been in the legislative process for more than 40 years, I can attest to the fact that while you may have contested methods as to how you're going to accomplish your goals, the marriage equity bill shows how it can work. Now, the positive side of that, of course, is that increased business. Many, especially the small businesses involving in catering and photography and events, marriage events and so on, have been benefiting almost immediately from the passage of the bill. So on an economic basis, on a social basis, on a question of community equity, I think that this is a good example of showing how you can take a difficult and challenging issue and by working together come to a successful conclusion for everybody all around.
Tyler via Twitter brings up an interesting topic about affordable housing, and you open the paper and you look at the ads. It's really expensive to own a home. What can we do for the next generation to make housing more affordable?
We've been doing it right now. Whether it's a question of our public housing being rehabilitated so that it's about 98% occupied right now and the satisfaction rate is very, very high, or whether it's moving into areas like the Housing Finance Corporation that I mentioned that has on its books 9,000 units where we're going to be forming partnerships out there to see to it that housing is available for the working middle class families. You can just take Haleakawila Place right now to give you a concrete example down just off Po'okaina Street on Haleakawila. 200 families have moved into those units just in the last month. And there are hundreds more, literally 3,000 that are going to be in the urban core that I mentioned before, that are going to be at rates that people can afford that are working families. So we are moving forward on that. It doesn't get the publicity necessarily because high-end real estate always has its place and is going to move forward. But this administration has been working very, very closely with the nonprofits and with the Housing Finance Development Corporation of the state to see to it that we move forward with housing affordability.
Senator Ige, what can be done to improve affordable housing?
Clearly, you know, the legislature has funded a lot of those programs, and the rehabilitation of public housing is a very important part of that. You know, this past session, we also increased the bond authorization for the Hula Mai program. You know, and I know that I bought my first townhouse as a Hula Mai applicant when I first graduated out of college. And so we need to look at providing affordable housing at all price points. You know, the rental assistance program, I think, is very important. Governor talked about the affordable housing in Kaka'ako. The concern that I have is when you look at HCDA and their approval of 5,300 units in 2013, less than 7% are affordable by those making the median income or less. So I mean, I think that there's lots of work to be done. You know, there is affordable housing is an issue across the state, so we need to work with our county mayors and the counties across the state to find ways to reduce the cost of housing.
Senator Ige, this brings up a topic from about Kaka'ako, and Leonard from Waikiki wants to know, with so much rapid development in Kaka'ako, can we absorb such an enormous overload?
Well, you know, I am concerned that development in Kaka'ako is happening too much too fast. There is legitimate concerns about infrastructure and whether the infrastructure is in place. We did talk about schools, and I still can't see where an elementary school would be going into that area. But, you know, the ones that have been approved, you know, and I'm hoping that they continue because they do create jobs, and that's very important for us. But on a going forward basis, you know, we need to follow the laws. Environmental and cultural preservation laws need to be followed so we don't run into the situation where a project gets stopped. You know, and then there are very good design guidelines in the Kaka'ako master plan. And if we can live within those, the height ceilings, the setbacks, the open space requirements, the requirements for parks, I do believe that Kaka'ako can be a community that we can live, work, play, and learn in. I think that's very important.
Governor Abercrombie, what about the infrastructure of Kaka'ako? Can it support all of the development?
Well, I was in the legislature when it originally passed, and unfortunately at the time I said, you know, I think this has to do more with politics than it does with actually trying to develop the area for small businesses, for housing, for the opportunity to develop the urban core. So for 35 years it was neglected. When this administration came into being, we recognized, and I spoke with the mayor about it and the council, that the rail was going to come through the Kaka'ako area. We had to have transit-oriented development come into effect there, and the infrastructure that was there can handle anything having to do with wastewater treatment and all the rest of it. It has just sat there neglected for 35 years. So of course people can be concerned about whether things are moving too fast or whether they're moving at such a rate is that they're not used to it because nothing was done. So if you take a look at the plan, you will find, just for example this week, the Kewalo Basin. We're going to completely redo Kewalo Basin. If you look at the open space that is planned there, to have a promenade come all the way from Thomas Square all the way down to the water's edge, you will find that we have a complete streets program there that's going to emphasize pedestrian traffic. If you truly want to have places where people can live, where they can work, where they can play, where we're creating a community, that's what we're doing. All over the world, major cities are developing their urban core. That's what Kaka'ako is going to be. It will be a shining example of striking the balance and to see to it that our working families have a place to live and that Honolulu in its urban core has a bright future.
And Governor Abercrombie and Senator Ige, we're very near the end of our show, so I wanted to ask this last question, and we actually had it via Twitter. Governor Abercrombie, yes. What would be the biggest change Hawaii would see if you are reelected?
I think that the emphasis would be on preschool, to see to it that our young children get the opportunity that they need to have in order to succeed. I've emphasized that in everything that I have put forward to the legislature and to the community at this point. We've made a slow start, But those 4-year-olds can never get that time back. There's 17,000 of them out there right now that I want to see have a future. I think that the biggest change they would see is the continuation of our respect for the environment. The Turtle Bay situation festered for more than 2 decades. I was able to bring that to a conclusion so that we have our coastal space open, public access open, and that the country is able to stay country. I think that you'll see that the investment that we've made, for example, in our highways and our airports, continue to create jobs that are going to bring prosperity for Hawaii. So I'm very enthusiastic about the job we've done, the job I got hired to do, and we're getting better, doing better, and we can count on that for the future.
Senator Ige, what would be the biggest change if the voters elect you?
You know, I think it would be about trust. You know, it's about restoring trust in government. People feel disconnected, like government is no longer listening, that too much of government's decision-making is on behalf of special interests rather than the public interest. So it is about a government that would engage the communities and would be listening to their concerns. It would be a government that would be empowered, because I believe in assembling a leadership team that believes in the basic philosophies of community engagement and redefining the Hawaii, you know, that our people want. It's about working with people to make choices and make tough choices about things that we can and cannot afford, you know, and then creating the Hawaii that we all want to leave to our children's and our children's children, because so much of what is happening, I hear over and over again from the people of Hawaii that, that they believe that government does not respond to their needs, and we need to engage them.
Senator Ige, thank you so much for your time. Governor Abercrombie, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it on behalf of the PBS Ohana. Thank you to you both, and good luck to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, next time on Insights, an open seat in Hawaii's 4-member congressional delegation doesn't come along often, but now that United States Congresswoman Colleen Hanabusa is challenging U.S. Senator Brian Schatz, 7 Democrats have entered the primary race to replace Hanabusa. 1 week from tonight, we'll hear from all 7 Democratic candidates about why they should represent Hawaii's 1st congressional district in Washington, D.C. That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Mahialani Richardson. Ahui ho.